A man stands at the bottom of a tunnel he dug for 3 months, deep inside a mound of mud brick. He pushes a pole at the ceiling, and gold pours down over his shoulders in the dark. The gold will survive. The thread it hung on will not. A mountain of mud brick, the color of the desert around it, stands in a green river valley in northern Peru. For 1,000 years, the people who lived beside it, farmers and herders and conquerors and priests, walked past it and saw only a hill. A face of hammered gold, with eyes of inlaid turquoise, wide open, does not blink. It has been looking into the dark for 17 centuries. A man lies on his back on a sheet of plastic at the bottom of a pit in the middle of the night, one hand resting on the bones of the dead and the other closed around a loaded pistol. These three things are separated by 1,000 years and by 400 miles of coast. They are also the same story. The Moche were never truly lost. Archaeologists had known the name since 1899. The pyramids had never moved. So why did it take until 1987 for anyone to read this civilization as a single human life, instead of a scatter of broken pieces? What had gone missing if the pyramids were always there? And what does it cost to get it back when the thing destroying it is not time, and not conquest, and not forgetting, but a shovel in the ground tonight? This is the fourth and final way a civilization slips out of human memory. Not buried, not miscredited, not abandoned, taken apart piece by piece and carried away. It is the only one of the four that is still happening right now while you watch this. And it is the story of the man with the pistol. He is a museum director with a fever and a cough, and tonight he is lying in a hole he should not be in, listening to the desert for footsteps. He did not come for the gold. The gold was never lost. He came for the one thing the gold could not carry by itself, the memory of who lay here and how and why. That is the thread. And in the spring of 1987, it was being cut, basket by basket, faster than anyone could save it. A man crouches at the head of an irrigation channel just after sunrise, working a stone gate loose with both hands. The ground under his feet is cracked and still warm from the night. When the gate gives way, brown water comes down out of the channel and spreads across the dry earth, and he smells silt and wet clay and hears the small sound of the flow finding the empty furrow ahead of it. He has done this every morning of the season. He is a keeper of the canal, and the canal is the most important thing in the valley. Behind him, to the east, the land rises toward mountains he has never climbed. The water comes from up there, off the Andes, down through a system of channels that run for tens of miles across the desert. In front of him, the valley is green. A narrow strip of green, a few miles wide, with bright fields of maize and beans and squash. And on both sides of the green, in every direction, there is sand. Pure desert, one of the driest places on earth where rain almost never falls. This is the bargain the people of this coast have made. The land gives them nothing on its own, but the rivers come down off the mountains, and where the water goes, life follows, exactly as far as the channels carry it, and no farther. Whoever controls the water controls the valley. The man at the gate is a small part of a system that feeds tens of thousands of people. Above the fields, rising out of the flat valley floor, stand great mounds of mud brick. From here, they look like hills, but he knows they are not hills. They were built, brick, by hands like his, over generations. They are the platforms of the lords, the sacred places, the huacas. One of them sits near a village in the Lambayeque Valley, some 20 miles inland from the sea. It is not the largest. No one watching the water this morning has any reason to think it matters more than the others. The man closes the gate when the field has drunk enough. The sun is higher now. He moves on to the next channel. A lord stands on the highest platform of a huaca at midday, gold across his chest, looking out at the valley below him. The sun strikes the metal on his skin, and the heat of it spreads against his breastbone. A thin wind off the high ground lifts a fine dust and stirs the feathers of his headdress, and he feels the weight of the headdress on his neck, the way he has felt it at every ceremony of his adult life. From here, he can see the whole of his world, the green river valley, the channels that feed it, the smaller huacas, the sea to the west as a pale line. This is the edge of the known. He has no word for the size of the planet. He does not know it is a sphere. He governs what he can see, and what he can see is enough to make him one of the most powerful men alive anywhere on Earth in this moment. And he has no way of knowing that either, because at this same moment, on the same planet, the world is crowded with people he will never hear of and who will never hear of him. To the north, across an ocean he does not know, is an ocean. The great city of Teotihuacan covers more ground than almost any city on Earth, and the Maya are raising stone temples in the forests below it. Across the world entire, on the far side of a globe, no one here has imagined, Rome rules the Mediterranean and is beginning quietly to come apart. China has already broken into rival kingdoms. None of these people know that any of the others exist. The Moche, least of all. They are sealed inside their valleys by desert on one side and ocean on the other, and they have built in that sealed space something remarkable. The Lord on the platform is the kind of man this story is about, though he does not know it. Men like him have ruled this coast for over a century, since the culture took shape around the year 100. He will be buried when his time comes, with more gold than he wears today. And then the desert will keep him in the dark for a very long time. In the late afternoon, a goldsmith lifts a sheet of dull copper out of a boiling bath of plant acid with a pair of tongs and watches the darkened surface change. The heat of the crucible is against his face. The smell of the bath is sharp and mineral. He sets the sheet down and rubs it with a polishing cloth, and where the cloth passes, the dead copper turns into living gold. There is no gold in the sheet that was not there before. This is the secret of his craft. He has mixed copper with a small amount of gold, worked it thin, then bathed it in acids that eat the copper away from the very surface and leave a skin of pure gold behind. Polished, it shines like solid gold and uses almost none. The technique is called depletion gilding, and it will not be understood again until chemists reproduce it in European laboratories in the 20th century, nearly 2,000 years from now. He does it by feel, by recipe, by the afternoon light on the metal. His workshop is the center of a whole way of recording the world, because the Moche do not write. They have no script that anyone has ever found. Everything they want to remember, they put into objects instead. So their potters make portrait vessels, faces of real and particular people. A man with a scar, a man laughing, a blind man, an old woman, modeled so exactly that you could pick them out of a crowd. Their painters cover fine ceramics with narrative scenes in thin red line, processions and battles and ceremonies, rid like pages. Their weavers and metalworkers carry the same images across every material they touch. The goldsmith at his bath is part of an archive made of things instead of words. It is a magnificent system, and it has one fatal weakness. Words once written can be copied and copied again and survive even when every original is lost. An object can only be in one place, lifted out of the ground, and unless someone has written down exactly where it lay and beside what, the page goes blank. The image survives. The sentence it was part of is gone. The goldsmith does not think about any of this. He holds the finished sheet up to the light, turning it, checking the color. It is the color of the sun. It will outlast him by 1,700 years. An old man stands in front of the canal gate he has tended his whole life at night in a downpour that a desert should never see. The rain is cold, and it falls on a place where rain almost never falls, and it confuses him in his body before it frightens him in his mind. He smells dead fish, carried in on a sea gone strangely warm. The mud is climbing his ankles where there used to be dust, and the brown water, far too much of it, is tearing the gate apart and carrying the fields away in the dark. He is the same kind of man as the one who opened the gate at dawn so many chapters and so many generations ago. The valley has run on men like him for 700 years. Tonight, the system that fed tens of thousands is coming apart in his hands, and there is nothing his hands can do. What is happening to him has a name now that no one had then. The Pacific, every so often, turns warm along this coast and overturns the weather. In ordinary years, it brings hardship. In the worst years, in a band of time somewhere between roughly 530 and 600, it appears to have brought catastrophe, rains that washed out the canals, then droughts that followed the rains and would not break. The dating is argued over and should not be pinned to a single year, but the shape of it is clear enough. And it was not the only thing. The soils were turning salty after centuries of irrigation. The land was tired after 700 years of harvest. The population had grown to the edge of what the valleys could hold. To the south and east, other powers were rising, the Wari and the Tiwanaku, pressing on the edges of the Moche world. No single blow brought them down. It was everything at once, a long bad season that became a bad century. The lords moved their centers. The southern capital was given up around the year 700. A great new city, Pampa Grande, rose and then was abandoned in its turn around 750 to 800. The last burials at the Huaca in the Lambayeque Valley were laid down around 800 to 850. And then the people who knew what the mounds were and whose lords lay inside them were gone. What was left was a row of hills in a green valley. For the next 1,000 years, the Lambayeque who came after, and then the Chimu, and then the Inca, and then the Spanish, would all walk past them. None of them would know the name Moche. None of them would know that under the largest mound, in a sealed room in the dark, a lord lay in his gold with his eyes of turquoise wide open, waiting. A man stands at the bottom of a tunnel in the late afternoon, 5 or 6 meters inside a mound of mud brick, and pushes a wooden pole up against the ceiling. The air down here is hot and close and does not move. Sweat runs into his eyes. He has been digging into this huaca for 3 months, he and a handful of others, working at night, hauling out baskets of earth. Tonight the pole goes up into the ceiling, and the ceiling gives, and the weight comes down on his shoulders all at once, cold metal against his wet skin in the dark. Gold. More gold than he has ever seen, than anyone here has ever seen, pouring down out of a sealed room above him. His name is Ernil Bernal. He grew up in this village. The textile mill that gave the place its work has closed, and there is no work and there is no money. And on this coast, when there is no money, men dig into the huacas. They have done it since the Spanish came, and before. The word for it is old. A huaquero is a man who digs the sacred mounds for what the dead were buried with. It is not a foreign crime here. It is a trade, passed down, half tolerated, the thing you do when the mill shuts. For 3 days and 3 nights, Bernal and the others take the room apart. They pull out gold and silver and copper, masks, ornaments, rattles by the sackful. And with every piece they lift, something else is destroyed that they cannot see and would not think to save. Not the gold. The gold is fine. What dies is the order of it, the position, the depth, the body it was on, the things it lay beside. The page the object was written on. They carry out the words and leave the meaning in the dirt. Just before midnight on the 25th of February, a man lies in bed in his quarters next to the Bruning Museum, burning with a viral fever, his chest tight with bronchitis. The night watchman knocks and hands him the telephone. He answers in a voice rough with coughing. He is 35 years old. His name is Walter Alva, and he runs this museum, and he is the regional inspector of archaeology for the north of Peru, and he has just been woken to be told that the police in Chiclayo have something he needs to see tonight. He gets up. He goes out into the cold desert air, under the empty road to Chiclayo, fever and all. And in a back room at the police station, an officer unwraps a bundle on a table, and Alva is looking at a mask of gold with wide eyes of inlaid turquoise that do not blink. He has spent his whole working life with the archaeology of this coast. He has never seen anything like this. No one has. The pieces on the table are not the usual looted fragments. They are royal. Someone has opened a tomb of a kind that has never been scientifically excavated, not once, in all the decades since the Moche were given a name. He learns that night how it came to the table. The looters had fallen out over how to divide what they had taken. One of them, angry at his share, told the police. The police raided and seized a portion. But it is only a portion. The inventory in front of Alva makes that plain. Most of it is already gone, scattered into private hands, moving toward the market. And the falling out has already turned bitter in ways that this coast knows too well, ways that have cost lives. Alva holds the mask. The fever is still in him somewhere, but he has stopped noticing it. He understands 2 things at the same time. The first is that this is the find of a lifetime. The second is that it is happening without him right now, faster than he can move, and that every hour he stands in this room holding this one mask, the rest of it is going out the door forever. Before dawn on the 26th, Alva stands in the room at the police station with the gold mask in one hand and the inventory in the other, weighing them against each other. The metal is heavier in his palm than it looks. The room is quiet. He has forgotten he is sick. There are 2 ways to do this, and he knows both of them exactly. The first is the way he is supposed to do it. He files the report. He requests approval from the Institute in Lima. He waits for funds, for a team, for authorization. It is correct. It is safe. It protects him. It takes between 2 and 6 months. The second way is to go to the Huaca now, tonight, with no approval, no funds, no team, and no one above him agreeing to any of it. To stand on a looted mound in a poor and angry village and start digging before the rest of the village finishes doing the same. He does the arithmetic that matters. Every day he waits for Lima is another day the looters work. Another day of gold lifted out and context killed. The thing he cannot get back at any price. 2 to 6 months of correct procedure would leave him excavating an empty hole. He chooses the second way. It is a decision that could cost him his career, his marriage, and more than that. He makes it standing up in a police station before the sun is even up. Stop here for a moment and hold the whole shape of it in your mind. 700 years of Moche, a civilization that built mountains by hand, turned copper into gold, and wrote its entire memory into objects because it had no other way to write at all. Then a bad century and a slow leaving, and 1,000 years in which the mounds were only hills and the name was gone from the earth. And now, in the cold dark before dawn on a single night in 1987, all of it comes down to one feverish man deciding to break the rules and start digging. Notice what the question has become. It is not whether the tomb will be found. The tomb has already been found by the wrong people for the wrong reasons. The looted gold is already moving toward men who will never know whose face the mask was made for. The only question left is how much can still be saved before the rest is carried off into rooms with no names. So watch the mound now. There is a man on it who has not slept, who has no money and no permission, lying down on it at night to guard the dead from the living. We are about to spend a season with him in the dark. On a night in March, Walter Alva lies on his back on a sheet of plastic at the bottom of the funerary chamber. The looters opened, his left hand resting on the bones of the dead, his right hand closed around a loaded pistol. The dug earth is cold around him. The plastic is rough against his back. The metal is a steady weight in his hand, and every sound from outside, the wind, an animal, a footstep on the slope above, runs straight down into that hand and tightens it. This is what the work has become. By day, an excavation. By night, a siege. The looters are local men. They live in the village below. Alva knows some of them by name, and they know him, and they have not given up on the mound. The dead it holds are worth more than any of them will earn in a lifetime, and Alva is one tired man lying between them and it. So he sleeps in the tomb, or does not sleep, with the pistol, because if he leaves at night, there will be nothing to come back to in the morning. There is no money for any of this. Lima has not sent funds. Alva pays his small crew out of his own salary, and some of the men he pays were huaqueros themselves, brought over to the other side of the work because they know the ground better than anyone, and because a man who is being paid to protect a tomb is not robbing it. He has a fever still. He has a wife in the work beside him, Susana Meneses, his co-director, who carries half of it. He has a young archaeologist, Luis Cerro, learning the trade in the worst and best conditions imaginable. And then help arrives from very far away. Christopher Donan, an archaeologist from California who has spent his life on Moche art, hears what is happening and comes. His presence brings something Alva cannot manufacture alone, the weight of an outside institution, eyes from beyond Peru, a reason for Lima and the world to take this seriously. On the 1st of April, the formal excavation of the platform begins in earnest. The siege does not end cleanly. One of the looters, the one who had been at the center of it from the start, did not survive a confrontation with the police in this period. The story reaches Alva on the mound. It is not a victory. A man from the village below is dead over the gold, and his family is still in the village, and the gold is still in the ground, and Alva goes on lying in the dark with his hand on the dead, listening for the next footstep. Every night he gets through without a loss is context kept. That is the whole of it. Hold the line in the dark, and the meaning stays in the earth where it can still be read. Under fluorescent light in an evidence room, 10 years later and a hemisphere away, a federal agent draws a heavy object out of its wrapping and sets it on a metal table. It is a back flap of solid gold, an ornament that hung at the back of a Moche lord's waist, almost 3 pounds of it. The agent's gloved hand feels the surprising weight of it, the cold of the metal under the hard light. There is no label on it, no site, no depth, no name. A masterpiece, nearly 2,000 years old, and it cannot say where it came from. It came from Sipan. From the tomb the looters opened before Alva ever got there. It crossed out of Peru, carried for a time, the trail records, by a Panamanian diplomat, and moved through the quiet upper end of the antiquities market, the part where great objects change hands among people with the money to not ask questions. The FBI seized it in an operation in 1997. It took 10 years to come back this far. It is one piece. In 3 days and nights, the looters took out something on the order of 3,000 to 4,000. Most of them, perhaps 70 or 80%, have never been recovered. They are in vaults and on walls and in collections all over the world, beautiful and silent. This is the exact shape of the loss, not the gold. The gold survives better than almost anything humans make. What dies is the answer to every question that matters. Who was this lord? Who lay beside him? What did the back flap rest against? And what did that arrangement mean? The looters preserved the object and killed the sentence. And even the finest rescue archaeology, even Alva, on his plastic sheet with his hand on the dead, cannot undo what those 3 nights erased. Some of the Moche is back. Some of it is gold without a name and will stay that way. In the spring at the site, Christopher Donan lays 2 things side by side and stops with his hand in the air. One is a rollout drawing, a Moche painted scene unwrapped from the curve of a ceramic vessel onto a flat sheet, copied line for line. The other is a photograph of the regalia coming up out of the excavation, and the crown is the same crown. The mask is the same mask. The scepter in the painted figure's hand is the scepter rising out of the ground. The painted scene is one Donan knows better than almost anyone alive. It appears again and again on fine Moche ceramics, the same composition repeating across centuries and valleys. Scholars had called it the sacrifice ceremony, a ritual in which figures in distinct costumes presided over the offering of captured warriors. For a long time it was read the way we read a myth, a sacred story, painted because it was believed, with no particular person behind any figure in it. What the side-by-side shows is something else entirely. The man coming out of the ground is wearing the costume of the central crowned figure in the painting, not a copy of it, the thing itself, which means the painted scene was not only myth, it was portraiture. The Moche were painting real men of real rank who really wore this regalia and really stood at the center of this ceremony. The ceramics were not just sacred art, they were a record of who these people were, made by a civilization that could not write down a name. It is the same gift the Olmec gave their discoverers in stone, arriving here in clay. The pottery, all along, had been a manual for reading the lords. No one had been able to use it because no one had ever found a lord still wearing the page. By torchlight in a freshly built chamber, a priest settles a mask of gold with eyes of inlaid turquoise over the face of a dead lord before the room is sealed. He lays a pectoral of gold beads across the cold chest and feels its weight settle. He fits the inlays of shell and turquoise into place, and there is a small, dry click each time a piece seats. The air in the closed chamber is still and close. Soon, the great wooden beams will go across the top, and the dark will have him. Around the Lord, the priest and his fellows, arrange a world, some 350 objects in gold and silver and copper and shell and turquoise, a headdress crowned with gold, ear ornaments so finely made that each one holds a tiny warrior in full regalia, complete down to a movable nose ornament smaller than a fingernail, a scepter, a staff, banners of gilded copper sewn onto cloth. The Lord is being dressed not as a corpse, but as a figure stepping into another office, carrying the full weight of his rank with him. And he does not go alone. The Moche send others into the chamber with him, a woman and 2 more young women and a child, a military man and a standard bearer and guards, a single sentinel placed at the threshold with his feet removed so that he can never leave his post, a dog, 2 llamas. Some of these people went into the earth with their Lord by a hand other than their own. The Moche practiced human sacrifice, bound up with their ideas of war and fertility and the offering of captives, and the Archaeology records it plainly and without apology. We record it the same way, not as horror to be dwelt on and not as something to look away from. It happened inside a religious world that made its own sense to the people living in it. What the scale of this burial tells us is simpler and larger. To send this much into the ground, with this many to attend him, this man must have been, in his own time and place, very close to the center of everything. Then the beams go across, and the light is shut out for 1,700 years. In the first hours of the 26th of July, Walter Alva is crouched at the bottom of a shaft, perhaps 8 meters below the looted chamber, when the great wooden beams of a ceiling appear in front of him, and he understands that they have never been moved. No one has been here. The looters dug down from above and stopped at the first room. They never knew there was a second deeper under their feet the whole time. He works the dirt away from one edge. A gap opens. The first thin line of light goes down into a darkness that has been sealed for around 1,700 years and falls on gold that no living person has ever seen. No one says anything. The whole crew is bent over the opening, holding their breath, and for a moment there is no sound at all in the desert. Then slowly the chamber gives itself up. A Lord, laid out in ritual position, exactly as the priests left him. The mask on his face, the pectorals on his chest, the ear ornaments with their tiny warriors, the scepter, the headdress, the attendants around him in their places, the dog, the llamas, every object where Moche hands had set it, in the order it was meant to be read, the arrangement intact and whole and speaking, not a scatter of pieces in an evidence room, a sentence, a life with its grammar still attached. This is the thing Alva crossed the fever and the months and the nights with the pistol to reach, not the gold. The looters already had the gold, up above and gone. What he has, and what no one had ever had before in the entire history of Moche archaeology, is one royal tomb still in context, the first ever scientifically excavated. A lord whose every belonging can still tell you who he stood beside, what he held, what he was. The Moche can now be known not as a heap of broken images, but as a person with everything around him in its right place. Above him, in the looted room, is the same kind of mask he was first shown in a police station in February, the one with the wide turquoise eyes that do not blink. Up there, it lies torn from its meaning, a beautiful orphan. Down here, in the chamber no one had touched, the eyes look up out of 17 centuries of dark, into the first light, and everything around them still remembers who they belong to. A Peruvian child stands in front of a glass case in the dim light of a new museum in Lambayeque, up on her toes, looking into the turquoise eyes of a mask that now belongs to her own country. The hall is hushed and cool. The gold throws a soft reflection in the glass. She holds still, the way you hold still in front of a face that is 1,700 years old and looking back. The road from the shaft to this case ran through the whole world. In October of 1988, the Lord was on the cover of a magazine read in millions of homes, and the comparison that attached itself to him was the one that needs no explanation: a tomb to set beside Tutankhamun's, Alva and Donan, who had met in a besieged pit in the desert, became names known to archaeology everywhere. The treasures traveled the United States on exhibition in the early 90s. In 1993, the two men published the full account, the book that fixed the find in the record. And then Peru did the thing that closes the circle. In 2002, near the place it all came out of the ground, the country opened the Museo Tumbas Reales de Sipan, a museum built to hold the Lord and his world together in his own region among the people whose ancestors he had been. The gold that the market had tried to scatter into vaults with no names was instead gathered into one room with every name it could be given. The work did not stop. More tombs followed at the site, more than a dozen identified in the years after. And the excavations are still going on in 2026. A civilization that the Lambayeque, the Chimu, the Inca, and the Spanish had all walked past without a name, is now counted among the great cultures of the Americas before the Inca. The child on her toes does not know any of this history. She only knows that the face is beautiful and that it is hers. That is enough. That is the whole point. In 2026, Walter Alva stands on the visitor platform of the Museo Tumbas Reales, 74 years old, looking at the gold mask he once guarded with a pistol in his hand. He is quiet in front of it. The turquoise eyes do not blink the way they did not blink 40 years ago in a police station, the way they did not blink for 17 centuries in the dark. An old man and a face that does not age, holding still in a cool, bright room. He has lived the whole of it now, and he knows it does not divide cleanly into triumph. The victory is real, and it is all around him. The intact tombs, the museum, a civilization that can finally be read as a life instead of a rumor. More than a dozen lords recovered in context, the work still going on at the site. He won the thing he lay in the dark to win, but the cost is in the building too, in the room above the one he saved. Tomb 4. The first chamber, the one the looters opened, will always be a wound. Thousands of objects scattered into rooms with no names, most never coming back. And a man from the village dead over the gold, with a family who stayed in the village, in a community that the digging had torn in two. What Alva did next is the part that is easy to miss. He did not treat the village as the enemy. He hired the people of Sipan, including men who had once been huaqueros, and trained them, and turned the place that had robbed the tomb into the place that guards it. Today, Sipan lives on the museum and the archaeology. The region that had nothing to do but dig the dead now has work because of them. That is what carrying the thread actually looks like, this far down the line. Not a clean rescue with a hero at the center. A man who arrived too late for part of it, saved the rest at real risk, lost things he could not get back, and then spent the decades afterward repairing the very community the whole catastrophe had come out of. The thread holds. It does not hold for free. So that is the Moche. 700 years of people in a strip of green between the desert and the sea, who turned copper into gold, built mountains by hand, and recorded their entire world in objects because they had no script to record it in. A bad century took the water away, and the lords moved on, and the people scattered, and the mounds became hills. For 1,000 years, no one who walked past them knew there had ever been a name. This is the last of 4 ways we have watched a civilization disappear. There was the one that was forgotten so completely that even the ground forgot it, until a man spent his life learning to read the earth. There was the one written out of its own story by the civilization that came after, recovered only when 2 generations refused to let it stay erased. There was the one that was seen all along and credited to the wrong people, until patience and a stone proof set it right. And there is this one, the Moche, seen the whole time and taken apart for profit while everyone watched. Each kind of loss asked a different thing of the person who answered it. Forgetting asked for time. Erasure asked for stubbornness across the years. Misattribution asked for patience and proof. But the Moche asked for the opposite of patience. The thread here was not lost in the past. It was being cut in the present, every night. And the only answer that worked was speed and a willingness to lie in a hole in the dark and refuse to leave. Walter Alva did not discover the Moche. The Moche were never lost. He saved the context that let them finally be read, and he reached it 1 chamber ahead of the men who would have erased it. That is the deepest thing these 4 stories have in common, and it is worth saying plainly now that the arc is closing. Archaeology is not the passive uncovering of a past that politely waits for us. The past hides in different ways, and each way demands a different human response. Someone has to notice. Someone has to care enough to answer in the specific way that particular loss requires. The thread does not carry itself. It is always a person choosing, often at cost, to carry it. Think of where this began 13 stories ago. A navigator on the open Pacific with 1,000 miles of empty water ahead, and the stars in his memory instead of an instrument in his hand. And here, at the end, a feverish man asleep with one hand on the dead and one on a pistol in a desert, guarding a face he had only just met. Between them, every kind of loss and every kind of keeping. One story told in all of them, people holding the thread. The mask is in its case now, in a cool room in its own country. The wide turquoise eyes still do not blink. They look out the way they looked up into the first light in 1987, and the way they looked into the dark before that. And behind them, for the first time in 1,700 years, everything is in its right place. It was almost lost. Someone came in time. That, in the end, is the only reason any of this is still here to be seen. This is where the channel stops for a while, and so it is worth being honest about why. We set out to follow a single thread through the deep past, the thread of the people who carried civilizations across time when those civilizations could no longer carry themselves. We have now seen the 4 ways the thread can be lost: total forgetting, deliberate erasure, mistaken credit, and the slow theft that turns a buried life into gold with no name. 4 kinds of disappearance and 4 people who answered each one in the only way it could be answered. But here is the thing about the 4th kind, the Moche kind. It is not finished. The other 3 losses happened long ago in the past tense. This one is in the present tense. Somewhere tonight, a mound is being dug into. A context is being destroyed so that an object can be sold. A civilization is being turned into gold without a name. And there is no Walter Alva on that particular mound, not yet. So before the next thread is chosen, sit with that. How many Moche are out there right now, being taken apart in the dark, waiting for someone to arrive in time. Subscribe to The Long Thread. The next thread is being prepared.